What's cooking, folks? Vermillion Phoenix here, and today we are going to be jumping into the Order Enclave. This is pretty much the hardest level in the game by a lot of accounts, so be prepared for it. What you're seeing in the beginning here are barricade locations that are going to be important. You have to set these up relatively quickly while you're playing on Rift Lord to get these to take, except for these particularly because I set them up a round earlier just to make sure that they're in place at the right time. So remember those barricade positions. You can go back and take a look at them to make sure you get the positioning right. And what we're going to do is we're going to place a lot of ballista to take ranged shots at a lot of the things that we're going to be dealing with. There's going to be a lot of enemies passing around the maps at the same time, and so having the range to deal this damage before getting them into a specific spot means that as a single player, you won't have to worry about spamming a bunch of CC in different places to hold them in areas where they'll get dealt damage. And so we're going to immediately start dealing damage at the gate with the blade staff and do a little bit of petrification with the stone staff to increase our damage when we get the opportunity. You're going to be using your mana to eliminate groups of flyers at once, so that you don't spend a lot of time trying to shoot at them with the stone staff. It saves you a lot of time, and it essentially is a big burst of damage when it insta-kills them. So it's one of the best uses of the staff, and something that a lot of people have been saying that I didn't feature in the earlier flyer levels, mainly because, you know, while it's good, you don't want to always rely on throwing your mana away just to kill flyers if you have better solutions for it. That way you can patch up any other gaps in your trap setup. Now, normally if I would have stoned those heavy enemies in that group beforehand, I could have just worked around them, getting that stun off of me, and it would have worked a little bit better. But you want to make sure that when you get the opportunity, you're luring them into your traps, and you can sort of backpedal with the ranged attack on the stone staff when you need it. If you get a little bit closer to these barricades before you kill the last ogre, then that'll help. Now, some people actually place Brimstone in the back there to defend the barricades, and it's not a bad idea if this were like an endless level or something, but the pathing for Kobolds actually seeks out the earliest barricade going towards the rift first, I believe. And if you have a barricade that's closer than the ones that are back there, I think the actual path from the Kobolds is just a little bit further to those rear caves. So they actually just run to this one first. Now that means you need to have this barricade alive, or else they're going to run towards the rear barricades when the sappers show up and just blow things up, which you don't want to happen. There's a couple of dicey moments in this run, mainly because I get hit with some of the attacks from a couple of the crowd control elemental bats. Basically, you want to avoid getting hit by shock bats and frost bats as much as possible during this run. If you happen to get comboed by more than one of them, you'll lose enough time that you might let something slip into the rift. So this is what I was saying earlier. We get this built in advance. It's a little bit of crowd control, some burst damage to take down the heavies, and a track of slow and brimstone. We're also going to eventually go back and toss up some ballista, and the ballista will sort of pre-fire on them before they get into that section. The arrow walls will burst down the heavy units, and then you know, the dart spitters with the ice element will deal enough damage to kind of slow down the heavies, as well as give the Arcane Autoballista a bit of time to work on their remaining HP, which they'll do a good job of. You'll see a little bit later. But we're going to come back to the center, and this is just a bit of funneling that also serves as some kind of padding to soak up any possibilities of sappers getting through. And it will also help with the fire elementals that will be coming through on the later levels. They'll kind of soak up the fireling damage so that you don't just immediately get blown up when they get shot apart. And from here on out, like, except for the what you'll see on the right side a little bit later, you're basically going to be controlling this center space to take out your flyers. We're going to put up a couple of dart spitters on the left and right side. As for all of the frostbats, they can insta-kill them if they manage to land a hit. Otherwise, they'll just slightly whittle down the damage, as the dart spitter deals a very small amount of damage to anything in its area, its trigger volume, while it's shooting its darts. So for the most part, it won't kill everything, but for the non-frostbats, there's a very good chance of them just insta-dying, and it also can freeze and trigger on the large, heavy enemies going through, the trolls, the ogres, and things like that. And so this is going to be our setup for this lane. We're going to add a second one of these dart spitters, a second arrow wall once we get, third one. But the second arrow wall is going to be important. And we're going to back up and use the stone staff to kind of range down these enemies. Now you want to make sure you aim for headshots here, because it lets you leave this area sooner. Once the heavy enemies are taken care of, you really have most of the work taken care of for you. The only thing that really should be getting through here after all of these traps are set up are mountain trolls, and you will have to look out on the minimap for any trolls that might leak through, as you'll have to go and manually take care of them. This won't take care of the trolls on their own, just because of how ridiculously heavy their HP is. You'll notice that I have ballista placed in each of the ceiling segments as we go through here, as some of the enemies will leak through, and you don't want to cluster your ballista too much, as that will cause them to take shots at the same target from multiple different ballista, and that's a problem. That was actually a misfire of the secondary on the blade staff. I meant to stone them sooner than that, but unfortunately I flipped through the weapons incorrectly. So we got the launcher on the blade staff instead. Once you get rid of the flyers, for the most part, the enemies that will path incorrectly on the left for a little bit will actually give you enough time to breathe, that your traps can shoot the ones that immediately go through the center. So you can kind of use this corner here as a choke point to take your shots, and that will let you deal damage to the enemies before they really get within range where any of the melee range enemies are a threat. And you know, your ballista will kind of shoot down just about everything else that's coming through here. We add a little bit more range here to this pathing, and another arrow wall, and that's just to make sure that if we get any heavy enemies through here at all, they will be taking a bit more damage. And again, this is because mountain trolls, they healthy. So with the blade staff, if we are not seeing like flyers immediately being dangerous, like they're not close to pathing towards the rift in the center area, you can kind of just jump over the barricades on the right and do some work with the blade staff on the groups of enemies that are coming through. The combination of the healing trinket and the blade staff's on hit heal will allow you to keep your health relatively high, so it's not a huge threat of dying from it. I made a mistake there by actually going to try to fight that that troll, or it was, I'm sorry, not the troll, the gnoll. It's going to come back and try to get in melee range with me, so I should have focused on the orc there. The grenadiers were going to follow me too, so you know, let the gnolls travel to you if you want to fight them for the coin, or if you absolutely need the breathing room, you can double back into the rift, let them get absorbed, and then come back and fight. Just remember that that's a little risky, because what you're doing is you're allowing the aggro to fall off of any other enemies that you could be holding near your ballista. Probably not an issue that anybody playing co-op will have to deal with, but playing solo, it's a little tight here. So to speed this up a little bit, I place another Brimstone that's a little bit closer to the corner that the sappers will be coming through, as well as the rest of the enemies. That bit of extra damage will help to kill them sooner, and just helps if, you know, you're sort of short on par time at all. We come back here to finish off any heavy enemies that might be coming through. You also want to try to snipe the hunters, the gnolls, before they actually get too close, as that just makes it safer for you overall. You don't lose a ton of HP, and they don't try to stab you in the back while you're fighting a lot of other enemies. After the initial couple of waves here, it's relatively a lot easier. One of the gnolls actually gets into the rift, which doesn't cost you any points, so isn't a big deal. But, you know, I usually just try to kill him for the coin. And then from there, it's pretty much a wrap. Like, you have a little bit of wiggle room because of everything kind of being trapped up at this point, but you still want to look out for your heavy enemies, as they have enough health to sort of fight their way through what you have set up here. So what I'm really looking for are the heavy enemies. And even with the barricades gone, the barricades are really only there to sort of delay the enemies and force them into running under the dart spitters. The dart spitters. I couldn't think of that for a second. Oof. But yeah, the barricades are there to absorb as much damage from the fire elementals as possible. We're going to place those back once all of this is clear, just so that we can be safe for the next wave, just in case some more come out. Because if that barricade wasn't there, those elementals would have run right into me, and then I would have blown up instead, which might be okay depending on the enemies that are near you at the time. If they're fire immune or fire resistant, then you know that'll cost you points, so be aware of that. I prefer to just have the cades up just for that extra buffer of the firelings not coming, you know, straight from my life. And you'll start to see that the way that everything kind of sprays out here takes care of a lot of the enemies before they necessarily even get into a place where you have to worry about how close they get to the rift. And because of the way that the ballista are spread out, they will be able to kind of shoot the flyers as they try to make a beeline for the rift. Keep in mind that if you don't place enough ballista, if they happen to miss a shot, it's basically curtains for you getting the 5 stars here. So be very careful and prioritize the heavy enemies and the flyers as what you want to personally deal with. Again, you keep hearing the screech of the sappers coming up, and because of how far away the barricades in the rear are down there, they run directly for the barricades that we have placed in front of the stairs. And that does all the work for us. We take out that heavy ogre, I'm sorry, the heavy troll, to make sure that they don't ruin our lovely perfect score here so far. And then we just run back and take everything else out. More fire elementals and them just blowing themselves up on the barricades, which we love to see. If you absolutely feel like, you know, you don't want to lose a barricade or you're tight on coin, you can feel free to bring the barricade health restore upgrade on the trap reset trinket. I am going with the upgrade that allows your traps to cool down slightly faster, you know, just for that added bit of DPS here. And that's the level. So I know there's probably some other clears out there using different weapons, but these are the ones that I found to be the easiest to use. Don't require quite as much work, though you do have to, like, you know, kind of actively maneuver your character into range to petrify the flyers. Either way, thanks for tuning in as always, and until next time, take it easy and have a good one, folks. See you next video. Peace.